I had always believed that hard work, independence, and responsibility would earn me respect, especially within my own family, but I was wrong. For years, I supported my parents financially, always stepping up when they needed help, but when it came time to divide the family's wealth, I was completely left out. I'm Lauren, 30 years old, a self-made woman who learned early on that if I wanted something in life, I had to earn it myself. My younger sister, Megan, 26, never had to lift a finger. Our parents, Jonathan and Diane, ensured that she always had everything handed to her, from her college tuition to her luxury apartment. Megan never worried about bills or responsibilities, while I was constantly reminded that as the eldest daughter, it was my duty to help the family financially. Lauren, you've always been independent, my father would say. Megan just needs a little extra support. That extra support meant that while I worked multiple jobs in college, Megan got her entire tuition covered. While I struggled to buy my first car, Megan was gifted a brand new SUV for her birthday. While I built my career from the ground up, Megan floated from one failed hobby to another, knowing she always had a financial safety net. I tolerated it for years, convincing myself that my parents were just doing their best, that maybe they didn't realize how unfair they were being. I reassured myself with the idea that when the time came, when things truly mattered, my father would be fair. I was so wrong. It happened on a completely ordinary day. My mother, Diane, had asked me to help her organize some old documents in the office. As I was sorting through the paperwork, my hands froze when I saw it, a legal document with my father's name on it. A trust fund. I skimmed through the details, my heart pounding as the reality hit me like a truck. A multi-million-dollar fund had been set up for Megan, a financial cushion ensuring she'd never have to worry about money for the rest of her life. My name? Nowhere. For a moment, I just stood there, staring at the paper, my brain refusing to process what I was seeing. My parents had always made excuses about why they couldn't help me financially, always told me that I needed to be strong and self-sufficient. But all along, they had been secretly securing Megan's future, ensuring she'd never have to work as hard as I did. My stomach churned, my hands clenched into fists. I needed answers. I needed to know why. I walked into the living room where my father was sitting, completely unaware that his carefully hidden secret had just been exposed. I held up the document, my voice steady but cold. "Dad, what is this?" His eyes flickered to the paper, and in an instant I saw it, the moment of recognition, the moment he realized he had been caught. "Where did you find that?" he asked, avoiding the real question. "It doesn't matter where I found it, what matters is why. Why does Megan have a trust fund, while I've spent my entire life working for everything I have?" My father sighed, rubbing his temples as if I was the one being unreasonable. "Lauren, you've always been independent," he repeated. "Megan needs more help, she's not as strong as you." I felt like laughing, not out of amusement, but out of sheer disbelief. "So, let me get this straight," I said, my voice shaking with restrained anger. "Because I worked hard, because I took care of myself, you decided I didn't deserve the same security as Megan?" He shifted uncomfortably, looking toward my mother for support, and as expected, she jumped in to defend his decision. "Honey, it's not about fairness," she said softly. "Your father just wanted to make sure Megan would be okay. And what about me?" I shot back. Do I not deserve to be okay? Do I not deserve the same consideration? They didn't answer, because there was no answer that could justify this. I left that conversation feeling more betrayed than I ever had in my life. My own family had decided my worth. Not by my character, not by my hard work, but by their own twisted version of who deserved what. Megan had been given everything, while I was expected to give to everyone else. The weight of it settled over me like a dark cloud. For years, I had convinced myself that I was just overreacting, that maybe I was being too sensitive, that my parents weren't really playing favorites. But now I had proof. The financial support, the luxuries, the trust fund, everything had been funneled toward Megan, while I was left to fend for myself. It wasn't just about money, it was about value, about where I stood in their eyes, about how I had spent my whole life trying to prove myself to people who had already decided I wasn't worth as much as my sister. I had never been part of the plan. And that realization? That was the moment I decided I was done. If my parents had made the decision to secure Megan's future at my expense, then fine, I was going to make a decision of my own. I was cutting them off. No more financial support. No more being their safety net. No more giving while receiving nothing in return. They wanted Megan to be taken care of? Let's see how well she does without my money keeping the family afloat. I had spent years carrying my family financially, making sure the bills were paid, covering unexpected expenses, and stepping up whenever they needed help, only to find out that my father had secretly secured a multi-million-dollar trust fund for Megan while expecting me to keep working hard and giving. That was the moment I realized I was done. I wasn't going to let them use me anymore, and if they wanted to see what true independence looked like, then fine, they could figure it out themselves. For the first time, I finally saw things clearly. My entire role in this family had never been about love or appreciation, it was about what I could provide, and now that I knew the truth, I had no reason to keep playing their game. So I made my decision. I wasn't going to argue, beg, or demand fairness, I was simply going to stop. No more monthly transfers, no more bailing them out, no more keeping the family financially afloat while Megan continued living off money that should have been shared equally. That evening, I called my parents. My voice calm, steady, almost emotionless. Dad, you always told me that I needed to be independent, that I needed to work hard and build my own future, and I've done exactly that, so starting today I'll be doing just that, on my own, and so will all of you. A long silence followed before my father finally spoke. Lauren, what are you saying? I'm saying that I will no longer be sending money, covering bills, or financially supporting this family in any way. You wanted me to be self-sufficient, right? Well, now I am, so from now on, you can be too. My mother gasped, my father scoffed, but I didn't wait for their response. I simply ended the call. For the first time in years, I totally dropped my burden. At first, I thought they might understand, that maybe this would be a wake-up call for them to finally see me as more than just a provider, but I was wrong, they didn't wake up, they spiraled. The bills piled up, utilities that I had covered for years were suddenly overdue, the comfortable cushion of financial stability they had taken for granted? It's gone. I ignored their calls for weeks, until one day, my mother Diane finally snapped. The phone rang late at night, I hesitated before answering, but something told me this was going to be good. Lauren, how could you do this to us? My mother's voice was sharp, frantic. We're your family. Do you really want to watch us struggle? I leaned back, keeping my tone cool. Struggle? Like I did for years while you handed everything to Megan. She didn't answer immediately, instead, she sighed, lowering her voice as if trying to reason with me. Sweetheart, Megan needs help, she's not as strong as you, she can't just build a life on her own the way you did. There it was, the same excuse, the same manipulative guilt trip they had always used. Then maybe she should learn, I said simply. I did. But that's different, she insisted. You're capable, you're responsible, you don't understand how hard things are for her. I almost laughed. Mom, do you even hear yourself? Megan has never had to struggle because you never let her, you've spent her entire life making excuses for her, and you expect me to do the same. Another pause, this time longer. Lauren, please, she whispered, we need you. I took a deep breath, my hands tightening around the phone. No, Mom, you need money, and I'm done being your bank. Then I hung up. For the first time in forever, I didn't feel guilty. A week later, I got a text. Family meeting. Sunday. Be there. I didn't reply, but I knew I would go, not for them, but for myself. I wanted to see them squirm, to watch them struggle to justify years of favoritism. When I arrived, the tension in the room was thick. My father sat stiffly at the head of the table, my mother looked at me with teary eyes, and Megan. Well, Megan looked angry. Lauren, my father began, his voice measured, we need to talk about your recent behavior. I raised an eyebrow. My behavior? Yes, he nodded, you've made a very rash decision, one that is hurting this family. I let out a short laugh. You mean the decision to stop giving you money? My father sighed, rubbing his temples. You don't understand, Megan. No, I cut him off, my voice sharp. You don't understand, Dad. I have spent years working my ass off while you funneled money into a secret trust fund for Megan, and you expect me to keep paying your bills while she gets to sit back and live off money that should have been shared. My father's face turned red. That money was meant to help her. Megan needs it. I pulled out my phone and placed it on the table. Let us go through the numbers, shall we? I had come prepared. I had spent hours compiling every financial record I could find, from the money I had given them over the years to the details of Megan's trust fund, and as I read them out loud, the room grew silent. $250,000 for Megan's education. $95,000 for her apartment and a brand new car for their golden child. A fully funded bank account under her name, all while I had been paying their bills. And how about me? Covering emergencies, and supporting them whenever they asked. I looked up, staring directly at my father. Do you still want me independent, right? Well, congratulations, I am, and now it's your turn. My father clenched his jaw, my mother's eyes filled with shame, and Megan? She finally realized, she was on her own. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the one scrambling to fix things, I wasn't the one being manipulated into sacrificing my future for my family. For the first time ever, they were the ones who had to deal with the consequences of their own choices. I expected anger, excuses, more manipulation, but what I didn't expect was Megan finally standing up for herself. For years, she had been the golden child, the one protected, the one given everything without question. But now, as the truth was laid out in black and white, even she couldn't deny it. She looked at the numbers, at the trust fund, at my father's guilty expression, and for the first time, she saw the injustice. Wait, she said slowly, turning toward our parents, so all this time, Lauren was paying for everything, while I had a secret trust fund. Neither of them spoke, their silence said everything. You told me we didn't have extra money, Megan's voice shook. You told me that Lauren didn't help the family enough, but she was the one covering the bills while I was living off money she never even knew about? Jonathan ran a hand over his face, struggling to regain control of the situation. Megan, sweetheart, you don't understand. This was for your security, we didn't want you to worry about money. And what about Lauren? Megan snapped. Did you ever care about her security? Did you ever think about what she needed? My mother opened her mouth to say something, probably another weak excuse, but Megan wasn't finished. If you really cared about fairness, then this trust fund should be shared. Lauren deserves her part. Jonathan and Diane looked trapped. They had spent years justifying their favoritism, convincing themselves that they were doing the right thing, but now with Megan, their golden child, challenging them, they had nowhere left to hide. For the first time, they couldn't manipulate the situation, they couldn't paint me as the problem, not when Megan herself was standing up for what was right. My father exhaled, shoulders slumping, the weight of his own guilt pressing down on him. You're right, he muttered, his voice barely above a whisper, we were wrong. I stared at him, shocked. In all my years, I had never heard my father admit to a mistake. Lauren, he continued, finally looking at me, I should have treated you fairly, I should have valued you the same way I valued Megan. I was wrong. I didn't say anything, because what was there to say? An apology wasn't enough to erase the years of being overlooked, of being treated as lesser, but at the very least, it was acknowledgement. We met with an attorney, and the trust fund was officially split equally. Megan didn't fight it. She knew it was the right thing to do, and for the first time, I felt like I was truly seen. As the legal papers were signed, I felt lighter, not just because I had finally taken back what was mine, but because I no longer needed their approval. For so long, I had been chasing validation, waiting for my parents to acknowledge my worth, but now? I didn't need it. I knew my own value. Family isn't about who shares your blood, it's about who respects you, who treats you with fairness, who truly sees you. For years, I had been nothing more than a provider, someone to keep the family stable while Megan was given privileges without responsibility, but now? Now I was free. As I walked out of that room, trust fund legally split, my father's apology lingering in the air, I realized, I never needed their permission to take control of my life. I used to believe that family was everything, that no matter what, you always put them first, that if you worked hard, proved your worth, and gave enough, eventually they would see you, appreciate you, and treat you with the same love and respect you gave them. But the truth? Not all families operate that way. Favoritism isn't just unfair, it's damaging, it creates deep wounds, leaving some children feeling invisible, while others are placed on a pedestal without ever earning it, and when you spend your whole life being the one who gives, while someone else only takes, it starts to break you. But here's what I've learned, you don't have to keep playing along. You are not responsible for fixing a family that refuses to see their own mistakes, you don't have to sacrifice your happiness to keep people in your life who don't value you, and most importantly, You don't owe anyone your financial stability just because they share your last name. Standing up for yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary. Taking back what's yours isn't cruel. It's fair, and sometimes, walking away from people who refuse to respect you is the only way to finally find peace, because real family isn't about blood, it's about respect.